If you've never roasted coffee before and you want to try out roasting coffee at home, then stay tuned and you'll find out everything you need to know, including what you need to get started, how to get good results, what to expect, and what mistakes you need to avoid, and whether or not it's actually worth the trouble. Let's get started. So first things first, before you invest in a roaster, the only thing you really need to get started is green unroasted beans. You can just use your own cookware and a stove. Hopefully you already have those. The beans you can order online. I found a 2-pound bag on Amazon for about $20, which is about what you'd pay for decent coffee in the store. That's all you'll need for just the roasting process. To make actual coffee, you need a grinder and some way to brew the grinds. Once you have the beans, you'll need something to cook in. I prefer a saucepan or a small pot over a skillet because once you start cooking, the depth of the saucepan will contain all the chaff, and you'll avoid making a huge mess. You'll also need a cookie sheet, but don't worry if you don't have one. You can just spread out some foil or parchment paper in a pinch. Measure out 1/4 to 1/2 cup worth of beans. You don't want to make too much for a few reasons. One is to make sure it's really fresh, because if you make a lot, it may sit around before you get a chance to brew it. Also because it'll cool a lot quicker once you're done roasting. Third, because you can make a variety of smaller batches to compare the results and figure out which you prefer best. And fourth is because as the amount of beans increases, so will everything else. The amount of chaff increases, which means more of a mess to clean up after, and the more smoke it'll give off while you're roasting. Another thing to keep in mind is the amount of coffee you make will increase in volume but decrease in actual weight. So if you measure your coffee in grams, you'll want to prepare about 20% more in weight than you'll need for making coffee. Put the beans in the pot and turn your heat on medium or just below. You can either stir with a wooden spatula or just swirl the pot around. You'll want to stand over the stove through the entire cooking process, stirring constantly to get an even roast. It should take about 15 to 20 minutes. Put the fan on high because it will start smoking right away. Keep stirring. By the time the beans start to get a light toast, you'll hear them start to crack, sort of like popcorn. Don't worry, they won't pop out of the pan, but it is audible. By the time they stop cracking, they should all be a light brown. You could stop here for a light roast if you want, or keep cooking until they start popping again in what's called a second crack. At this point, you should have a balanced medium roast. After you've done a few batches, you can keep going until they get a dark brown for a dark roast with those rich, bitter coffee flavors. Now that they're at the desired color, turn off the heat and continue stirring the beans. You'll notice a bunch of chaff settling at the bottom of the pot, and you can start transferring them to a cookie sheet. Any large spoon will work. Just be careful because the beans are very hot at this point. Once they're all on a tray, you can let them cool and shake off a bit more of the chaff. Since we've made such a small batch, they should cool very quickly, as little as 5 minutes in most cases. At this point, I like to rub off the remaining chaff as I transfer them to a container. I like roasting coffee in the evenings so I can have it ready the next day for my first cup of coffee in the morning. As you experience with roasting, you'll notice the flavors will range from sour in the lighter roast with more of the true flavors of the beans. Mid-level roasts are going to be smoother and more balanced, but also very mild flavor-wise. As you get into the darker roasts, you'll bring out the rich, bitter coffee flavor that you're probably most used to. The flavor will also depend on how fine you grind the beans, as well as your brew method. So in the end, is it worth roasting at home? This part is very subjective, so I'll let you be the judge if it's worth it to you, but I'll give you some things to consider. I won't get into the benefits of fresh roasted coffee in this video. I'll be making a follow-up video soon to this dedicated to why you should roast your own coffee. But here's what I will say. If all you want is a great cup of coffee at its peak freshness, if all you care about is the end result, then it's probably not worth doing it yourself. Also, if you're into instant gratification, then this is definitely not for you. You probably want to just find a local roaster and buy direct from them. You'll still get the benefits of fresh roasted coffee, and they're probably going to do a lot better job at roasting than you will. And when you factor in the time and effort it takes to roasting yourself, the cost savings you get from doing it is minimal. A single pound of unroasted beans is just as much as a pound of fresh roasted coffee in most cases. This doesn't mean it won't be worth it to you to roast your own beans. There's a lot to be said for roasting at home. If you love coffee and enjoy doing things yourself, and the possibility of starting a new hobby interests you, then absolutely go for it. The price of a small bag of unroasted coffee is pretty low, and there's nothing like enjoying something you made by yourself. And the smell of fresh roasted coffee is unmistakable. I'm new to roasting coffee, so if you have any suggestions, please put them in the comments. Click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and check my channel for follow-up to this, and consider subscribing.